What's up everyone, I'm Chase here at Rocky Mountain ATVMC coming at you with my top 5 tips for better braking. So when it comes to brakes on your motorcycle or your ATV, it's no secret, we all know they're absolutely crucial. The funny part is having really good performing brakes on your motorcycle or ATV can actually make you a faster rider. And that's why it's so crucial. You want to always be doing good maintenance and upkeep on your brakes to make sure they're always in peak performance. Now some of my tips today are going to be about maintenance and some are going to be about certain parts and accessories that are going to give you the best braking power. So my first tip is going to be with your brake pads. Now the reason I say that is because you want to be checking your brake pads regularly. If your brake pads are too thin, well what happens is they can't absorb and dissipate heat as well as they should be. And you got to remember that heat is public enemy number 1 when it comes to your brakes. So the hotter they're getting, the less they're going to perform. Now your owner's manual is going to give you recommendations and it's going to give you specs on when you should be replacing your brake pads. So you're going to want to have a set of calipers to measure your brake pads. So check your owner's manual, and if they're out of spec, if they're too thin, you definitely want to get new brake pads on there. Another thing to keep in mind is if you're going to be going for say a long ride or maybe wet, sandy or muddy conditions, if your brake pads are near that limit, I just recommend putting new ones on there, just not taking that risk whatsoever. Now at Rocky Mountain, we carry a lot of different brake pads. We have OEM brake pads. We also have a lot of brake pads from top manufacturers. But one thing you want to keep in mind too is that not all brake pads are made from the same material. And if you're not sure what material would be best for you and your style of riding, well, watch the video we have where I talk about all the different materials and the advantages that they all have over each other. So make sure you watch that. That'll steer you in the right direction. Now lastly, with your brake pads, one thing you want to keep in mind too is when you are putting new brake pads on, these are going to be totally flat. Now if your rotors are a little bit older, rotors are going to wear too, so you're not going to have a perfect contact with your brand new brake pads on the rotor. So just know it may take a little bit for those brake pads to wear in and to get that nice contact patch that you're looking for. And lastly, when I'm taking my calipers off in the front and the rear and I'm swapping out my pads, I like to take them apart, just check at the pins. You just want to make sure that everything is sliding well, and again, that's going to keep your brakes working at peak performance. So that's my first tip, is checking and doing maintenance on your brake pads. So my second tip is going to be maintenance on your rotors. Now rotors are made from steel, so they're very hard, they're very durable, but just like with your brake pads, they are going to wear out over time. Now your owner's manual is going to give you tolerances, so you want to take your calipers, measure the thickness of your rotor, and if it's too thin, then you want to get those changed out. Now because rotors have these cooling holes in the middle which help promote cooling, they're actually going to wear unevenly, and typically what will happen is you're going to get a disc shape on each side of your rotor. And when rotors get too thin, well, they heat up faster and actually start to warp. And if your rotors are warping, you're not going to have as good braking. So that's really important to measure those, swap them out if they are too thin. Now another cool tip that we have when it comes to your rotors is what we call deglazing them. When your brakes are getting really hot, what can happen is the material from your brake pads can actually transfer onto the rotor, which reduces friction. And you want as much friction as possible. That's going to give you the most stopping power. So what we like to do is when we take our rotor, we just take a Scotch-Brite pad and you're just going to scrub your rotors. You don't need to go crazy and press as hard as you can. You're just going to scrub your rotors, and then once you've done that, you're going to take some brake cleaner. You're going to spray your rotors off, and then you're going to wipe them down with a clean rag. Now you can use a white rag, that way you can see the residue coming off, but you're just going to spray them down. You're going to wipe them down until all the residue is off, and that's just going to give you a nice clean surface on the rotor and also for your brake pads, and that's really going to help keep that braking power as strong as possible. So that's my second tip, is maintenance on your rotors. Now my third tip is going to be upgrading to an oversized front rotor. Now these are very popular. If you look closely, most pros these days, no matter what discipline they're riding in, they're going to be using an oversized front rotor. And the reason being is it's going to give better surface area or more surface area. It's going to promote better cooling, better heat dissipation, and just give you more stopping power. Now we have these available from a lot of different brands on our website, but on this YZ250, we've got the Tusk Typhoon oversized floating rotor kit. So this is a full floating design rotor, and it's going to be laser cut from tempered stainless steel, and these things are awesome. I've ran these on my motorcycles, great stopping power, and the price point on these things is awesome. So that's my third tip, is upgrading to an oversized front rotor. Now my fourth tip is going to be bleeding your brakes. Now this is something that I feel gets overlooked way too often. Now you got to remember, with your front and your rear brake, your brake fluid is going to break down. In fact, what happens is it absorbs moisture from the air. It's a very small amount, but what this does, it actually results in your brake fluid heating up faster, which causes brake fade. Now brake fade, you want to be really careful of that, because as your brake fluid heats up and that brake fade gets worse and worse, it can actually leave you feeling like you don't have any brakes at all. So very important. Now your owner's manual is going to tell you how often you should be changing out the brake fluid, but there's a couple tips and ways that you can know that it might be time without having to look at your manual. If you're out riding and your brake pads and your rotors and your brake lines are in good condition, but you feel like your front and your rear brakes are getting spongy and it just doesn't have that stopping power that it did before, well, that's a really good indicator that it's time to get some new brake fluid in there. Now, if you've never changed the brake fluid on your bike, if you've never bled your brakes, it's really not that difficult. We have a how-to video. We show you step-by-step how to get that done. And there are a couple tools that we offer on our website that are going to make the job easier. And I've actually got a couple here to show you. So this is our Tusk brake bleeder kit. That's really inexpensive, great value. We also have the Motion Pro mini bleeder. So that's another great tool. And one that we've used for a long time that we really like, this is the Mighty Vac brake bleeding kit. So any of these are available on our website. Again, watch that how-to video, pick up some of these tools. It's really just going to simplify the job. Now, one last thing I do want to talk about, or two last things actually, is brake fluid. You want to make sure that you're only using the brake fluid that is recommended by your manufacturer. So you can check your owner's manual, but also on most bikes, your reservoir cap in the front and the rear is actually going to tell you what brake fluid you are going to need. Now, if you're not quite sure, you can call us, you can comment below, you can chat live online. We will get your questions answered if you do have any doubts about that. Now, lastly, one inexpensive upgrade that you can make that's really going to help out is a steel braided brake line. So on this YZ250, this is a Tusk steel braided line. Now, the reason these are so beneficial is it's braided steel with this rubber coating on the outside. The steel braided brake lines, when your brake fluid heats up, they're not going to expand as much. So they're just going to give a more consistent feel when you're working hard on your brakes. So that's my fourth tip, is going to be bleeding your brakes. So my fifth tip is going to be with lever placement. Now this might sound silly, but I've actually found it makes a big difference. So lever placement on your motorcycle or ATV, really it's going to come down to the rider. You just want to make sure you're comfortable and that you are in control. Now with the rear brake pedal, really the common place for that is going to be about level with your foot peg, but what I want to talk about is going to be with your front brake lever. Now you want to, when you're grabbing your front brake lever, most guys are going to use either the index finger, their middle finger, or both. But what you want to do is get as much leverage as possible, and the most leverage you're going to get is by grabbing at the very end of your brake lever. So what I like to do is I like to position my brake on the handlebar in a position to where when I grab it, I'm going to be grabbing towards the very end of my brake lever. That's going to give me the most leverage as possible, which is going to help increase the stopping power when I'm grabbing my brakes. Now it doesn't really apply to your brake, but the same concept, it can actually be used here on your clutch side as well. Because oftentimes, like I said, I see riders with it all the way against their grip, so they're grabbing right here on the inside. If you want, just move it down the handlebar just a little bit, and you're going to get more leverage on the outside. It's simple as that. And so there it is. Those are my top 5 braking tips for your motorcycle or your ATV. Hopefully, some of these have helped you out and steered you in the right direction. If you have any questions about what I talked about today, well, comment below, chat live online, and give us a call. We definitely want to get your questions answered. And if you want to see all the products that I talked about today, head over to our website at RockyMountainATVMC.com where you can pick those up. Remember, orders over $75 are going to ship free. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to us on YouTube. That's going to keep you up to date in the loop on the latest gear guides, product reviews, how-to videos, and our top 5 tip videos like this one you saw today. I'm Chase here at Rocky Mountain, and we'll see you on the trails.